Hello everyone, welcome to the webinar. I'm Hannah Gannon-Stewart, Deputy Editor at iGaming Business. Welcome to today's session on KYC and identity verification in the US post-PASPA. This webinar is being run by identity verification company Jumio in conjunction with iGaming Business. In May, the United States Supreme Court repealed the Professional and Amateur Sports Provision Act 1992, or PASPA, as it is better known, paving the way for individual states to legalize online sports betting in the US. Not a day has gone by since then without news coming out of the states about the new legislation or major gambling brands entering the market, and there's no doubt that this is something that's got the industry extremely excited. However, progressive states need to figure out the best approach to making sportsbooks secure with authentication and advanced identity verification before businesses make the most of these new opportunities. To shed some light on this, I'm joined by Jumio's Head of Sales for EMEA, Anis Khan, and his colleague, Head of Sales for the US, Johnson Ha. In a moment, I will hand over to the two of them for their presentation. Before that, at the end of the webinar, Anis and Johnson will be taking questions, so please feel free to submit any of those that you have in the box on your screen. There's a questions box there which you can use. Submit throughout the webinar, and at the end we'll come back and we will field those questions for the guys. The webinar is being recorded, so that will be available online at iGaming Business tomorrow morning as well. For now though, over to Johnson and Anis.
Great, thank you, Hannah. Thanks so much for your time. Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening to everybody on the line. It appears as though we have folks from across the globe, so definitely grateful to have everybody on the line today to spend about an hour with us to go through some of the new legislations with regard to PASPA and specifically around KYC and identity verification, specifically for the U.S. sports betting industry. First, wanted to give you a brief agenda with regards to what we'll cover today. First off, in May of 2018, there was a PASPA repeal based on the Supreme Court. We'll touch briefly on that. Thereafterwards, I'll touch briefly on the role of KYC and AML compliance, specifically within the gaming sector. Anis will speak on why user experience matters, specifically within the gaming companies that he has worked with across EMEA, and we'll end it with a brief introduction with regards to Jumio. But just before we kick it off into gear here, I wanted to give you a quick overview about Jumio. We are a AI-powered identity verification solution. Our ultimate goal is to help digital businesses verify their customers completely digitally and remotely. So imagine you walk into a bank, you walk into a hotel, people today show their government-issued IDs across the globe in order to verify who they say they are. So what we've been able to build out across the 8 years that we've been here is the ability to emulate that same experience to verify those customers completely digitally, but also remotely. And as of today, we are trusted by very global brands like Airbnb, United Airlines, and HSBC. So to kick off, wanted to give you a quick introduction with regards to the PASPA repeal that was instated in May of 2018. There was a 6-3 ruling for the Supreme Court. To give you some background, PASPA was signed into law by George Bush in 1992, and there were several states that had online sports betting or just sports betting in general. It was Nevada, Oregon, Delaware, and Montana. But as of this past May, New Jersey challenged that PASPA Act, which is also known as the Professional and Amateur Sports Protection Act, in order to push that out of the law, and now it's somewhat become legal for certain states. It's not legalized federally, but now states are looking at ways to impose more sports betting leniencies with regards to their overall system. So right now, some states are required to have a license. That could be in the millions. So it's definitely critical to have the right compliance process in the bidding process when they're looking to legalize sports betting. To give you some color with regards to what the footprint in the global, but also the U.S. specific focus with regards to the expansion of online sports betting, it can now be potentially legal. Right now, there's 6 states, aside from Nevada, has a sports betting law in place currently, Delaware, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, and West Virginia and Mississippi. So there's roughly around 16 states that have the tabled bill, and although there is bills in states right now, there's several states like Oklahoma, Utah, Texas, Arizona, and Washington, who may never pass this. But because of that, this was done by a study with a gaming boutique industry, Ayers and Krejcik, and they say that there could be potentially a larger rollout within U.S. states, state by state. And then what this really means, so the PASPA, with the PASPA repeal, the American Gaming Association believes that there is a $150 billion market that is gambled on sports betting in the U.S. 97% of those were bet illegally. What's something to consider is that illegal sports betting globally is anywhere from 75 to 300 billion. So now with the potential legalization, there's a way for a lot of these online gaming operators to tap into that. As I mentioned previously, there is a state-by-state rollout in order to have the framework be more legalized. Just this past August, there was a federal framework for legalized sports betting that United States Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer had outlined in the proposal this week. So there could be a larger rollout federally, and there could be implications around that. But at this moment, it's still a bit unclear with regards to the role of online and mobile betting. Currently, sports betting can only be used in place at casinos. So in order for someone to place a bet completely digitally, they have to be within the state of Nevada or some of the states that are already legal, walk into a land-based casino or a retail location in order to onboard, fund their accounts, and start the verification. In addition to that, there are a number of apps that are currently out in the market that allow sports betting. So there's going to be an inherent need. How do you tap into these folks completely digitally to verify themselves? And in addition to that, because it is sports betting, online gaming operators are going to have a need to verify people are of the age of 18 and above in order to play. So preventing minors from even getting into the system whatsoever. But now, even with the age verification, esports are becoming widely popular. So outside of sports betting itself, esports could be a potentially $23 billion market by 2020. So, something to consider there is that 80% of global enthusiasts of esports are of the ages of 10 to 35. So there has to be appropriate controls in place in order to verify these folks completely remotely. And then one thing here in addition to that is that because it is a state-by-state rollout, geolocation services are going to be necessary. You have to be able to fence consumers. So if you're on the borderline of New Jersey and New York, you have to assure that person is indeed in New Jersey. So there is a combination of technology that is out there, like IP address triangulation, being able to tap into cellular towers to determine that Johnson Hall, yes, is indeed in the state of New Jersey and able to play. And then lastly, I'll touch about this more in detail, but the role of KYC and AML with regards to the mandates for sports betting. So these are some of the laws. KYC and AML are really strict requirements within the financial services industry, but what we're finding based on our experiences that a lot of online gambling operators and casinos are following the same regulation requirements of financial services. So what this really means, I spoke briefly about the potential massive market that is out there, anywhere from 75 to 350 billion globally in sports betting, but there's going to be a massive land grab across different casino operators, offshore Nevada-based casinos, and online fantasy sites. So specifically for non-Nevada casinos, New Jersey, based on the PASPA repeal, there was a victory for New Jersey. So now they have legalized sports betting. 5 states such as Connecticut, Mississippi, New York, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia already have sports betting laws in place. So they could do a rollout fairly quickly given this recent PASPA repeal. And then 14 others have introduced sports gaming legislation in recent legislation sessions. And then with regards to the Nevada-based casinos, you can imagine some of the large operators there like Caesars, MGM, and some of the very well-known brands already have sports betting in place, and they have certain jurisdictions in other states as well. So being able to roll out sports betting more ubiquitously is going to be a really helpful way for them to penetrate the market. And then with regards to offshore sportsbook and gaming operators, it's important to know that the European market is a very mature industry, and is estimated to close at roughly 100 billion euros in the previous year. So, and then what we're finding is that a lot of those companies, like William Hill and others, already have some sizable operations in Nevada. So being able to tap into half the casino sportsbook there is going to be critical. And then lastly, with regards to online fantasy sites like FanDuel and DraftKings, they are within the PASPA. It doesn't specifically state out fantasy sites specifically, but because they have a massive user base, they have the ability to allow sports betting more holistically, and they have a presence in the U.S. But as of this past summer, Paddy Power had recently acquired FanDuel. So that was a way for them to enter and break into the U.S. market. I'd imagine in the next couple months or half the year, there will be more consolidation with regards to European gaming operators partnering or even potentially acquiring U.S. Potential gaming companies as well. And what I'll go ahead and do is speak briefly about the vital role of KYC, right? Given this land grab, how can new casinos, sportsbook, and operators cut through the clutter and gain more market share? For us, we argue with the financial service companies that we work with and gaming operators, they're following suit with regards to the requirements that are mandated. So for us, AML and KYC compliance being built into your solution is going to be helpful as far as being able to create the most optimal user experience for your players, especially in a digital and online environment. I will talk a bit about KYC and AML, but then Anis will discuss the importance of user experience and share some recent research findings that we've had that may be helpful for any company exploring whether to expand their services to sports betting. It's important to know that KYC was originally rolled out in October 2002 following the U.S. Patriot Act of 2001. Unfortunately, due to the 9/11 incident, there are stricter requirements with regards to how not just banking institutions verify their customers, but any type of business that deals with money, but also money laundering, corruption, and bribery. It's really to help mitigate terrorist financing. And then what that really means is there's three components and mandates as part of that process. Understanding the identity. How do you definitively establish identity of a player that's looking to play on your website? And then understanding the customer's intent. So that customer or that player themselves are looking to verify themselves in order to operate or participate in online sports betting. And then right now, the process to verify somebody is very, antiquated. You have a team of over 1,000 KYC analysts sitting behind a room in order to verify themselves. So there has to be more innovation and technology that would help to mitigate and reduce the operational processes of being able to verify as players. But then there's a balance with regards to risk. So understanding how are you putting in place identity verification solutions to help mitigate any type of money laundering risk within your platform. And just this past year, large operators in Europe were fined up to $8 to $10 million for breaching KYC and AML compliance. And then in addition to KYC, there's AML. So KYC is a subset of AML itself. So anti-money laundering refers to a set of procedures, laws, and regulations designed to stop the practice of generating income through illegal actions. So you could think of dirty money with a lot of the cartels back in the 80s. They were pumping a lot of dirty money into the global economy. So a lot of governments were looking at ways to reduce that. So in 1986, President Reagan put in place the war on drugs. How do you prevent that? Is looking at controls, setting controls in place in order to prevent terrorist financing and putting clean and dirty money into the system whatsoever. So customers' due diligence means taking steps to identify your customers and checking who they say they are. And being able to obtain their customer's name, we find that having someone's government-issued credentials is the best way of verifying Johnson Ha is who he say he is. And then with regards to the overall impact with AML and identity verification, there are three key ingredients to identity verification itself. The identity. Online identity verification is the starting point of AML compliance. There is a myriad of solutions digitally today that do the best in order to verify Johnson is who he say he is based on inferred data. Inferred data could be a credit check, a public data check, pinging my information to some type of database to assure that I am who I say I am. And there are social checks as well. Where Jumio takes a different approach is we're verifying you based on what you have in your wallet or your purse, which is your other government-issued credentials. And then secondary to that is the customer's intent, obtaining information on the purpose and intended nature of the business relationship. So I am looking to submit my information in order to be part of that digital platform or that digital transaction itself. But then even on an ongoing basis, banks are required to make sure that they're monitoring all the financial transactions that are happening through their system and making sure that they have the stringent controls and requirements in order to mitigate any type of AML issues from happening in order to prevent any fines from happening whatsoever. So to do so, what we find is that you need to have a solution that is where your customers are, whether they're on mobile devices or on the web. It's leveraging on-device technology, biometrics, and using facial recognition, which is very widely acceptable today in order to authenticate and verify who their customers' identities really are. And then here, I'll pass it over to Anis to speak briefly about the user experience with regards to why it matters for a lot of the online gaming operators today, especially for land-based, but also online-based gaming operators.
Perfect. Thank you, Johnson. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. So as introduced earlier, so my name is Anis Khan. I head up the sales team in EMEA. So I think from my point of view, I'd like to talk a little bit about, firstly, why user experience matters. I mean, as we know, as more competition enters the market, we think the new battlefield will be the customer experience or the player experience. Currently in EMEA, gaming operators are juggling between fraud detection, compliance requirements, and at the same time, they have to deliver a great player experience. So during the next few slides, I will go into more details as to why this is key. So when you roll out an online identity verification as part of your player onboarding or your KYC program, the two key questions, in my opinion, every operator should be asking the new identity provider is, one, how well can the solution actually detect and deter fraud? Two, how well does the solution reduce abandonment rates and increase your account conversion? I mean, the two questions could be key to having a seamless user journey while at the same time keeping the unwanted players out. Now, I mean, how do you identify? How do you get identity verification? Nirvana, let's explore a few ways to reduce fraud and generate more conversions. One is less fraud. So how can you ensure the customer is who they say claim to be, and not a fraudster or a bonus abuser with multiple accounts? More conversions. So since less than 1% of all online transactions are fraudulent, companies must pay attention to the other 99% and ensure they've got a great user experience. And we'll explore each of these categories in turn. Now, the importance of identity verification. I mean, KYP is the term that we hear a lot in gaming. In European gaming, the operators have got a lot of importance on identity verification in order to, reduce fraud, but more importantly, the bonus abuse and knowing who your players really are. And this is a quote from one of the large EU-based gaming operators. Quite possibly forever. Often these losses take place before the first bet is placed. In January this year, Jumio commissioned Harris Interactive and iGaming Business to survey active players and gaming operators globally. So differences between desktop and mobile onboarding processes and whether there are opportunities to reduce abandonment rates at points where the players must go through an online identity verification process. One of the other things are what matters to players in the onboarding process when choosing an online gaming site. Players' perceptions on current onboarding and identity verification processes. Also, operators' views on achieving positive user experience while fighting fraud and meeting due diligence stemming from AML, KYC compliance obligations. So, gaming operators have the opportunity to increase player usage for online platforms by optimizing their current account opening, which includes point of deposit, where ID verification becomes mandatory. One thing we wanted to discover through this research was the abandonment rate within the gaming at deposit stage. Now, Junior works with a variety of industries such as FSI, sharing economy, where the abandonment rate at account opening seems to be an ongoing industry issue. However, in gaming, the only feedback on this was given to us by some of our gaming operators, but we didn't know how this looks for an overall industry, and neither was there a study to talk about this. So with this in mind, one of the things we wanted to discover was the abandonment rate at deposit stage in gaming. And it came to us as a surprise to discover the abandonment rate was as high as in FSI. We usually associate gambling with fun and not complicated, complex processes, especially at registration stage before even becoming a de facto player. So perhaps the question for us or is working in this industry is how can we truly make our player registration process much faster, simpler, and easier? And also the study revealed that 1 in 5 online gaming players would spend more time gambling online if the sign-up process was less complicated and took less time. And most of the gaming operators tend to agree. Number 2, to say mobile is important would be stating the obvious, given today's smartphone-dominated world. One answer to this would be creating a better ops on mobile. So while we discovered that indeed most players were on desktop, the ones that expressed their wish to play on mobile said not enough apps are available, or if mobile web was existent, the process was slow, too complicated, and overall took much more time. Users say trusted identity verification is important. Without a doubt, players in our survey want a fast sign-up process. At the same time, they indicated the importance of security across multiple dimensions. Secure identity verification protection against hacking, a well-established privacy policies to protect their personal information. But in order to understand how the experience at account and registration stage can be improved, it's worth understanding where exactly the issues are. The interviewed players mentioned that among key hurdles before onboarding or depositing identity verification was complex and at time consuming. Also, other elements such as registration, forgotten passports, and depositing funds were all contributing to the abandonment. If a player had a smooth and easy experience, more of them said they would play more. But what does that mean? Better time spent for the player as it takes less time onboarding, faster and more accurately having the identity verified, and then better ROI for the operator as the players are truly engaging with your offering rather than being stuck in the initial stage of deposit, get you frustrated, and potentially also moving to a competitor, which also offers a better experience. Now, we mentioned speed and accuracy at identity verification stage. Through the study, we also understood a bit more about players, what their priorities are, and how they prefer to engage with the gaming operator. 19% mentioned the ability to faster sign up and registration as a key element in playing and spending more time on the gaming platform. We also discovered that just like in any other industries, players prefer both a simple and safe space within which to gamble. We found out that the need for security and for playing with a de facto player was high on the list of priorities of the end users interviewed. Also, 40% of the interviewed players cited the ability to accurately verify users as being critically important. One other thing this research aimed at was also to understand if there's anything else in terms of innovation and trends about this industry that perhaps was little known to us. Indeed, we were surprised to discover that when it comes about trends, the gaming industry looks at innovation within the banking industry. This was a little surprise because you would usually expect it to be the other way around, since gaming has the ability to faster innovate and then a heavily regulated industry with so much legacy behind it as banking. Yet the reality was that gaming operators were waiting for the banks to test the latest digital identity verification technologies and then implement it themselves. Among the most recent item on the list of operators interviews was the use of biometric identity for player recognition. Johnson gave you a little overview on who Jumio are. So I'll go into our vision. So Jumio's identity as a service connects to your product, app, or service to verify your customers' real-world identities with a simple ID scan and a real-time selfie. Jumio lets you accurately and seamlessly know and trust your players. So Jumio's identity verification solution enable operators to increase their conversion while providing a seamless customer experience and reducing fraud. At Jumio, we believe the real approach to KYC is a hybrid approach that combines machine learning technology and ID experts. So Jumio has created NetVerify Trusted Identity as a Service. It's a complete solution that combines three key pillars. Number one, ID verification. Number two, identity verification. And then finally, the third pillar, which is document verification. So here's how the solution works. So pillar one, ID verification, that's where we examine driving licenses, passports, basically any government issued ID in over 200 countries, including in foreign languages like Korean, Chinese, Japanese, and check if the ID document is authentic and valid. Number two, identity verification. This is where we capture selfies and then use biometric facial recognition as well as liveness detection to make sure it's a live player taking selfie, and then compare that selfie to the picture in the ID document that was supplied. And finally, document verification. Now, this is where we look at the POAs, known in gaming, also proof of address, for example, bank statements, utility bills, credit card statements, and we extract the data points from those documents like name, address, issuing dates, account numbers if needed, and make sure it matches the data that was on the ID that was supplied. In the gaming world, there's a number of different use cases where identity verification can play an important role. One of them being new customer onboarding, to perform your KYC with all your new players at the point of registration or at the point of deposit. Cash payout verification. Now, in most jurisdictions in Europe, many gaming operators are required to capture the player's ID at the point when they're cashing out. So I believe Gibraltar is one of the biggest ones where they have to collect an ID at the point of payouts. Age verification. Is the person holding the ID is over the age of 18? Or that can be done at the point of account opening as well. Proof of address verification. As I stated earlier, Jumio can extract key bits of information from an ID document, including the address info. Jumio's sweet spot. And why are we becoming the standard for traditional and digital banks? One is optimize account openings, deter fraud, protect your ecosystem, meet KYC and AML compliance mandates, and lastly, provide a seamless customer experience and increasingly familiar, obviously. So Jumio currently provides digital ID verification services to over 35 gaming operators globally. These also include 9 out of the top 10, and that's from the Power 50 gaming list. Also, as a last note, Jumio will be in New York for the ICE USA on the 27th and the 28th of November. So it would be great to meet all of you. And at this point, I would like to hand over and say thank you to all our audience, and we'll now move into a Q&A session.
Thank you, Annie. Thanks, Johnson. That was really interesting. I just want to remind everyone that there are questions open, so feel free to submit them using the question box, and we will go into a sort of bit of a Q&A session now where I will field those through to the guys. So I'll just give you a couple of minutes to, send in whatever you're interested in, and we will run some questions through from there. So the first one that we want to field through to you guys is about how are EU-based gaming operators using Jumio currently? Can you just sort of expand a little bit on that?
Sure. So Anis here. So there are various. Hello.
Hi. Yeah.
Oh.
Can you hear us?
Okay. Yes. So there are various different use cases, as stated in the presentation. However, a lot of it currently comes down to where the operator is licensed. So, for instance, in Malta, the Maltese gaming operators are currently using Jumio at the point of payouts, as they're not required to use any sort of KYC earlier than that. However, we do have some operators, like, for instance, Unibet, who do use us at an earlier stage to make sure that they have vetted the player at the point of deposit. So that moves into another use case, which is at the deposit stage. Now, in the UK licensed gaming operators are using us at the point of account opening. So we're working with one of the largest gaming operators in the UK, where they use us at the point of account opening. And also Skybet being another one licensed in the UK, they use us at the point of account opening. We have heard from a number of different gaming operators that they are also utilizing Jumio when a player either forgets or loses access to their accounts, to verify that they are who they say they are. So they ask them to hold up their ID and take a selfie to verify that they are essentially who they are, to allow them access to the account again.
And in terms of kind of how you've looked at the US market, have you guys got a feeling of whether the sensibility of US users and indeed US operators is slightly different? I mean, do you anticipate a difference in the way that KYC will be most effective in the US compared to the European market, or do you see it transferring fairly straightforwardly across those borders?
Yeah, I would say within the U.S. market, just based on the experience of EMEA and some of the consolidation like Paddy Power acquiring FanDuel, I think some of the regulations and compliance requirements will be very similar to that of EMEA. So at the end of the day, what they want to mitigate is KYC and AML and being able to verify customers. So at the root of it, it's imperative to have the right controls in place. And at the end of the day, for us to determine to help some of these gaming operators in the U.S. do the same with what their counterparts in EMEA is doing as well.
And I was quite interested in the point you made about sort of taking the lead from the banks. I mean, why do you think it is that EU gaming operators tend to follow the lead of banks in this area?
I think obviously the banking space being so heavily regulated, and obviously, they tend to follow what the banks are doing in order to comply with the regulations, because obviously the regulators are also implying the KYC, AML checks, PEPs and sanctions checks. That's all coming from the banking world. So that, in my opinion, this is one of the reasons why the gaming operators do look at the banks as a standard and follow that too.
Okay. Another question that's come in is, can you describe the way that Jumio would be embedded into the workflow? So sort of how does Jumio work in the user journey sort of overall? Can you sort of shed a little bit of light on that?
Yeah, sure. As mentioned, so I can give a couple of examples. So For instance, Betfair in the EU, they've integrated Jumio at the point of account opening. If the user doesn't pass the data check, at that point, Jumio is automatically triggered. So they would then ask to hold up their ID and follow the process. There are a number of different other examples where Jumio can be embedded. So at the point when they make a first deposit or they hit a threshold of a deposit, at that point, Jumio is then triggered in the player's account page, and they're then asked to verify their identity.
Okay, and we've got a question that's come in from someone in Italy, which is asking, does KYC apply somehow to affiliates as well? Or is it just sort of at the brand level with the operators? Are affiliates kind of a concern here as well?
Yeah, sure. So we are speaking with a number of different affiliates in the EU, and also we are working with one of the major gaming operators in Europe, where they will be looking to verify the affiliates, and also they are asking their affiliates to verify the users they are sending to the operator. So the rules will apply. I'm not 100% on the regulations, but I believe there will be a regulation around knowing who your affiliates are and verifying those.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely seems to be the direction of travel, doesn't it? That kind of the rules that are applied to operators are increasingly being applied very much the same way to affiliates, and the responsibility of kind of what affiliates are up to is feeding back into the operators anyway. So I would expect that kind of all of these things would apply to affiliates as much as operators.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So I think it was the sort of KYB, right? Know your business. And this will be, those rules will be applied here as well to the affiliates to know who you're dealing with, really, from the operator's point of view.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, in terms of kind of how you guys go about providing age verification or proof of address, how do you extract all that information from the IDs themselves? How does that work?
Yeah, so as part of the process, whether it's a passport, a driver's license, or an ID card, what our technology does is that we're pulling all the data from the ID itself. So we're going to return the database, date of birth information from the ID. So based on that data point, you can determine someone is of age of 18 and above in order to participate in any type of online sports betting whatsoever.
Okay, and there's another one that's just come in here, which is Jumio verifying customers' information with any kind of people database? How does that work?
So for us, we do partner with a few large companies in order to do the data validation itself. So when we're doing our ID verification, we're extracting the data from the ID, and then a lot of our clients and partners that we work with, they ping that data source in order to do some type of PEPs and sanctions or OFAC checklists that are required. In addition to any type of databases, for us, we process over 130 million IDs since we rolled out the solution at Verify. And with that, we've gained a lot of intelligence with regards to fraudulent IDs across the globe. So companies like Airbnb, they have a global presence. So when they flag a Nepalese ID or Italy ID to be fraudulent, we determine that. So we're including that within our blacklist. That helps provide a network effect.
Sorry, continue. Sorry to cut you off there.
No worries, no worries.
I mean, it's a related question, really, but obviously GDPR has been kind of a massive concern for the last few months and is now in force. I mean, you guys presumably are GDPR compliant. Can you explain a little bit about how you achieve that?
Yeah, exactly. So we do enable a lot of our clients to be GDPR enabled. At the end of the day, we have a PCI compliant process that we have audited every single year for the past 5 years. And the best way, and Jeremy King, the managing director of the PCI industry, says the best way to understand GDPR is first to know PCI. So how data is transferred, how it's stored, how it's managed has to be within the parameters of PCI. So of course, all the information captured in the European market, there are stricter GDPR requirements there for European citizens. But in the US, there are some states like California who are looking at privacy requirements within that process. So for us, given the controls that we have in place with the data that we capture, we do enable GDPR compliance for a lot of our partners and customers.
Brilliant. I think that's definitely something that sort of people will be concerned is covered, because it's such an issue on everyone's kind of in people's thoughts at the moment. In terms of pricing, I mean, what is pricing based on in terms of sort of, is it number of verifications? Can you talk us through the pricing structure?
Yeah, that is correct. So it's a number of verifications. So Jumia, we provide volume tiered pricing based on an annual commitment. So a lot of our clients, they either purchase 500,000, 100,000, or 1 million transactions with us. And given those tiers, there is a reduced price per scan for higher volume commitments. So typically our agreements are 12-month in nature.
Excellent. And the only other thing I guess to ask really is sort of the slightly big, it's a big one, is kind of where you think, how long it will be until PASPA will allow online sports betting. This is certainly something that we're kind of keen to predict at iGaming Business. How long do you think it will be before online sports betting is allowed across the US?
Yeah, I mean, well, I think we're not really sure, but we're pretty sure that the casinos will apply all sorts of pressure to enable this functionality as soon as this data is profit handsomely, if and when they allow this. Presumably all of this will, with all the necessary KYC and AML requirements for wedding and online customers.
Brilliant. I'm just sort of having a quick glance here to see if there's any more questions coming in, but I think we've probably covered them. It's been really interesting, guys. Thank you ever so much for being with us and talking us through everything. It's been a really interesting presentation, so we appreciate it. Just to remind everyone, this is being recorded. It will be on the website tomorrow morning for us in the UK, probably this afternoon for you guys. So that's going to be available. Anyone can get access to that and listen back through. So that's all up there. But I will wrap it up at that point. Thanks so much, Anise and Johnson. We really appreciate you doing the webinar with us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Anna.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks a lot.